All right, let's kick off this deep dive. I want to start with a question, maybe for you listening. What truly drives you each day? You know, that core reason for getting out of bed, the thing that gives you that spark, even on a Monday.
That's a big one, isn't it? I mean, so many people are searching for exactly that, years sometimes.
And that search, that quest for purpose, that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Right.
We're looking at the concept of Ikigai. It's this, well, fascinating Japanese philosophy. Roughly means reason for being or purpose in life, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. A reason for being.
And our way in, our shortcut to getting informed on this is the book Ikigai, The Japanese Secret to a Long and Happy Life.
Ah, yes, the one by Hector Garcia and Francesc Moral. Spanish authors, interestingly enough.
Right. Published by Penguin back in 2016. It's been pretty popular.
It really has. So, okay, our mission today, essentially, is to unpack what this book says Ikigai really is.
Exactly. Explore the key ideas it presents and, talk about the practical stuff. What can you actually take away from it for, well, a happier life?
Got it. So, digging into the book itself, it doesn't just leave Ikigai as this vague feeling.
No, not at all. It breaks it down. It talks about, I think, 5 intersecting elements.
That's right, 5 key areas. The authors argue your Ikigai sort of lives at the crossroads of these.
Okay, so what are they? Let's lay them out.
Well, first, there's what you love that's your passion.
Right.
Right? Then what you're good at, your vocation.
Okay, passion, vocation.
Then what the world needs, that's your mission. And crucially, what you can be paid for. Your profession, or maybe contribution is a better word sometimes.
So passion, vocation, mission, contribution, and purpose linking it all.
Basically, yes. Purpose, passion, vocation, mission, contribution. The book really hammers home that true fulfillment, that Ikigai feeling comes when these 5 things are working together.
Yeah.
In harmony.
That makes a lot of sense. It sounds like a really solid framework. But does the book give you pointers on how to actually find those things or weave them together? Seems like it could be overwhelming.
It does, yeah. And that's actually where they bring in the idea of flow.
Ah, flow, getting in the zone.
Exactly. And what's interesting is how they connect Ikigai not just to your big life mission, but to, everyday stuff.
Okay.
They suggest that finding activities where you get totally absorbed, completely lose track of time. That's key.
So it could be anything, like gardening or writing or even really focused work.
Precisely. Anything where you experience that deep engagement. It's less about one single eureka moment, finding your Ikigai.
Right.
And more about integrating these elements bit by bit. Through daily habits, micro habits even. Consistent practice.
And that's what makes it feel so grounded, doesn't it? It connects this sort of lofty philosophy to things you can actually do.
Yes, absolutely. It's very practical in that sense.
And I found the writing style really helps too. It's incredibly accessible. You don't feel like you need a PhD in philosophy to get it.
That's a huge plus, I agree. It makes these potentially complex ideas easy for almost anyone to grasp.
Yeah.
And beyond just explaining the concepts, it gives pretty straightforward advice on how to start finding that purpose, often using examples from Japan.
Oh, the stories. I thought that was one of the best parts.
Me too.
These little anecdotes about Japanese people, often older people, who seem to really live their Ikigai. They're living these long, really vibrant lives.
Yeah, they're very motivating. They make the principles feel real, See how it actually plays out.
Definitely. But, okay, playing devil's advocate for a second, the book focuses heavily on these 5 elements and this idea of flow.
Right.
Does that tight focus mean it maybe misses some things? Are there limitations because it's so streamlined?
That's a really fair question. I mean, by focusing so clearly, does it maybe sacrifice some depth elsewhere?
Like, for instance, does it back up the claims with hard science? Or maybe explore how this applies outside of Japanese culture in detail.
Exactly. And while the book doesn't really present much scientific data to, prove the benefits of Ikigai in a clinical sense, it leans more on the philosophical side in those anecdotes we mentioned.
Okay.
And the Japanese cultural context is, of course, central. That's a strength if you're interested in that culture.
Sure.
But it does mean that some interpretations, some of the specific ways it's framed, might land differently for someone from a completely different background. It's a fantastic window, but maybe not a universal how-to guide for everyone on the planet.
That makes sense. So thinking about who would get the most out of this book.
Well, clearly, anyone who's actively asking those big questions, what's my purpose?
Yeah.
How can I feel more fulfilled?
Yeah, if you're on that kind of search, this is definitely one to check out.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Naturally, anyone with a specific interest in Japanese culture or philosophy, it offers a really interesting perspective on life and longevity through that particular cultural lens.
Hmm.
And I'd say for general self-help readers, too, if you like exploring different frameworks for happiness and purpose, it adds some unique ideas to the mix.
So summing it up a bit, Ikigai. The Japanese secret to a long and happy life really gives you this distinct angle on finding purpose.
Yeah, built around those 5 core pillars:
Yeah.
purpose, passion, vocation, mission, and contribution.
And its strengths are definitely the practical advice that focus on flow in daily life and those really inspiring stories.
For sure. It makes it a valuable read for anyone seeking meaning or just curious about that Japanese perspective.
But as we discussed, you have to keep the nuances in mind.
Right. The strong focus on just those 5 elements, the lack of, say, peer-reviewed studies backing every claim.
And the potential cultural specificity, which isn't necessarily a negative, but it's context.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's probably why you often see it rated highly, maybe a solid 4 out of 5 stars. It reflects both its real value and those considerations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe a final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
Given this blend in the book, Ancient Philosophy, modern interpretation, how might your own sense of purpose, your own reason for being, change or evolve?
Good question.
If you consciously tried to identify and maybe integrate those 5 things, passion, mission, vocation, contribution, purpose, into your own life.
And maybe thinking about what small steps, practical things you could actually take. Starting now, to find your unique Ikigai, whatever your background might be, something to ponder.
Yeah. And if you enjoyed this, please do like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in.
And we look forward to having you join us for our next deep dive.